I'm not really even sure where to begin for this movie. Like a lot of other ones, I was a little late to the party, but I just went into it trying to go blind. I've heard a lot of things about how it's just amazing, and like it was hard to describe, and I'm not here to tell you that I figured out the way to describe it, because I have not. All I can tell you is that it's amazing and that it's hard to describe, but I'll do my best, because it is such a simple and heartfelt story that's wrapped in like a super complex plot that somehow manages to be the shining point of the movie. And the multiversal aspects of this movie are amazing, I gotta say, because like they're very surface level. It's a very surface level dive into the idea of the multiverse, and it just works perfectly, because it's just a vehicle to drive the story forward without ever becoming too overbearing. The point is never to overshadow the main story, right? Between the three characters, Evelyn, Waymond, and Joy. The point is never to overshadow them. It's never even, the point is never even really to make them into these main, protagonist, antagonist. Like, to a certain extent, yes, but then at the same time, it's just a story about a family that needs to figure their shit out. That's the best way that I can put it. And even with all the multiversal aspects of the movie, it's still just a movie about a family trying to figure things out. And that's what's so beautiful about it. And it's also beautifully shot. Like, with the different universes having different aesthetics depending on what era or movie they're trying to recreate. It's just, I have no words for the way this movie is shot. It's so interesting, and they managed to tell the story with the way that it's shot. And I love when movies do that too, because they really try to keep your attention visually, mentally, emotionally, just every way they try to keep your attention. And there's also a surprising amount of action sequences in the movie that have really good fight choreography, since they're able to do like really innovative things with the combat, because again of the multiversal aspect. And I don't want to dive too much into it, because I don't want to get into spoiler territories. I just want to tell you that this movie is fucking amazing, and that it does really interesting things in a lot of categories. So basically all I can say is this movie is beautiful to look at, it's beautiful to listen to, it's beautiful to feel, because trust me, it will make you feel a million different things. And maybe it's just me, because I have a soft spot for movies that have to do with like conflict between parents and their children, but this one really got me. Like, I teared up, or just outright cried like 3 or 4 times. And maybe I'm just soft, but a movie like this that's able to make the audience feel something so profound when the movie itself is so ridiculous, and they don't hide from the fact that it's ridiculous. This movie doesn't take itself that seriously, if we're being honest. It really dives into the silly and the ridiculous, and it embraces it, and it still is able to make you feel something so profound. It's actually impressive. There's a part of the movie that I will not spoil, but there's literally nothing going on, and yet you're actually super invested, and I don't know how to explain it without spoiling it. The characters just all feel so genuine, because they have struggles that a lot of people can relate to, and these issues, they're on top of that, they're juxtaposed with the multiversal threat that's about to destroy everything. And yet it's by addressing and dealing with these little issues that they have that they're able to address and deal with the much bigger issue, which is the multiversal threat. What I just said is basically the essence of the movie. They tried to deal with their bigger issues at first, dealing with their smaller issues. No matter how big those issues end up being, the characters all feel so real, and their problems all feel so real, the big and the small ones. And really the key, like I said, is that they just have to address the small ones first, and then they can work towards the bigger ones. And it's funny, because it's not even about the bigger ones in the end. It was always about the small ones, and that's what makes it so beautiful and genuine. And I don't know how to explain without spoiling. I don't know if there is a way to explain this movie without spoiling, because from everything I've heard, I went into this movie essentially blind, even though I've heard takes on this movie, because I feel like it's hard to describe it without spoiling it. It's hard to talk about it if you haven't seen it, because it's such a visceral experience, and I wish I could forget it and see it again. That's how good it was. One of the shining points of this movie, really in general, are the characters, and I love every single one of them. Even the antagonist, the protagonist, but I think my favorite character might have been Waymond. I'm not gonna lie. He is played so good, and I'm not trying to spoil anything, but the way that the actor is able to switch on a dime, basically, from one like type of acting to the next is so good. It's just I don't even know how to explain. Like, I have a hard time talking about this movie, to be honest, because it's so fresh in my mind, but it's also just, it makes you feel a lot of things. It really does, and that's the objective that the movie set out with. It's meant to make you feel things, and the character that made me feel the most things in this movie is definitely Waymond, just because of how he reaches out to Evelyn, and he's kind of like he's like her anchor. The entire movie, Evelyn's losing herself. She can't figure out how to deal with the small problems before addressing the big ones. But Waymond's the one that kind of brings her back. He yanks her back and tells her and reminds her that you need to deal with your issues. You can't put away issues and then just forget them. You have to address them at some point, or else they just fester and they just create more problems. The only way to deal with your bigger problems is to address your smaller ones, and I keep saying that, but that's the core of the movie. It really is. And I loved the lesson that you're supposed to get out of this movie with. I can't remember the last time I left a movie with a lesson. That's just another thing about this movie that's just purely amazing. I literally don't really have a single negative thing to say. The pacing was great. The action, not much of it, because the action is not the point of the movie, but the action was great. The visuals was great. The dialogue was great. The characters were great. Everything was perfect. So I have to give it a 10. I have to give it a 10. It's like my favorite movie in a long time. I don't think I've ever quite seen a story like this told within this kind of setting. And just because of that, I have to give it a 10. Just because of what it made me feel and what it made me experience, I have to give it a 10.